All right,
Great.
everybody, what's going on? Matt Ford, welcome to Curiosity Class.
I'm very, very grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Dude, this is kind of your show in the making. I have you to thank for this. We were hanging out the other night and I was complaining to you about all the things I was like, oh, I want to start a podcast, da, da, da. And you were like, well, just record an episode. I was like, well, how do I do it? You're like, get a Zoom and I'll be your first guest. So thank you so much for making me do this. I really, really appreciate it.
It's a great pleasure to be here.
So today I know you as a badass climber, a father, a CEO, a great friend and mentor. But today I kind of wanted to focus on the CEO and startup and music industry ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you. Let's do it. I mean, I could talk a little bit about, what I do in a nutshell. Would that be helpful? Or
That'd be great. Yeah, start us off.
yeah, I mean, yeah, when you and I talked, I think the two ideas that I know a little bit about is the live music industry and just startups. And my story in a giant nutshell is taught myself how to code in college. I like dreaded the idea of like throwing on a suit and going to the career fair and like climbing some corporate ladder. So I was like, I just need to start my own company. And I always had a passion for music, both playing music, going to live music concerts. And I wouldn't say I like consciously chose the live music industry, but um, I think my like passion for music just kind of steered me towards the opportunities that intersected startups and software and music. So I'm like 12 years out of college at this point and have never had a job outside of the ones that I've created. I take it back. I had like a 3.5 month stint helping other startups. So helping and consulting other startups for Techstars. And besides that, I've just been running my own companies, and every company has gone deep into the live music industry and progressively deeper and deeper in like a direct linear fashion or perhaps a exponential fashion. Like now is the deepest I've ever been in the music industry, but from day one of my entrepreneurial career, I was doing something in the music industry. So got a little bit of experience in both of them. Didn't really consciously choose the music industry, to be honest, but I know a little bit about the crazy web of what's going on in the background when you go to a concert, and it's a very crazy web at that.
Man, there's so much to unpack there. I guess I want to start with, so you taught yourself to code in college. Did you do that for any specific reason other than you found it interesting? Did you have a sense that tech was going to be in your future at some point?
Well, yeah, so I actually played college football with the hopes of playing professional football, and I like got a bunch of injuries my freshman year, and also was like, man, this is a full-time job. Like, I'm not gonna like this is I'm not cut out for this, and I want to like have a brain when I'm 50 and not have horrible concussions. So, I took the spirit of like, I was like, what am I trying to accomplish? And with football, well, I want to have like a fun job and make a lot of money. And just at the time, like Facebook had just came out, and I know Zuck turned down like 20 billion from Microsoft as like a kid, and the founders of YouTube got $1 billion payout. And I was like, oh, hey, here's these college students. I'm a college student. They're coming up with website ideas and coding it up in their dorm. So like, why don't I do that? And I'm like, oh wait, I don't know how to code. Um, so I just kind of simultaneously started thinking of software ideas. I was carrying around a notebook and just walking around, just noodling all day long. Like there was a period of my life where I was writing down 100 ideas a day, and a lot of them were software based. And like, well, if I'm going to create a software company, I might as well learn how to code. So at the time, there was like free classes offered by UW-Madison, and I took classes in like HTML and PHP and CSS, and I could build my own websites, and I got relatively deep into being an engineer myself. But it was only so that I could like make technical decisions and not look like a total fool when I'm like trying to work with engineers and hire engineers. But anyway, yeah, that's how I got into coding.
That's so crazy. Do you still have that notebook to this day?
Oh my
That original
gosh.
one?
Oh, I wish. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess this is one of the, I was thinking about what I wanted to talk with you about. It's funny, like, as an entrepreneur now, I'm like definitely coming up with a lot of ideas still for my company, but I've really like turned off that side of my brain. And now it's like focused on like doing the hard work of making an idea come to life. So it's not about like coming up with 100 ideas a day. It's about making
Mm.
like five really good ideas a year happen. Um, So that wasn't directly answering your question. Where that notebook is, it might be in a closet somewhere. I would like to dig it up, but there was like all sorts of ideas in there. I mean, it was like hundreds of ideas a day. And I do think that was the thought process that started getting me into deciding, all right, you know what? Like I've come up with 1,000 ideas. This is the best idea. Let me just start putting momentum into it. It was kind of like, I don't know, I like grow plants, and you just kind of see what seeds work out and then start watering the ones that are actually growing. So the process of like coming up with a lot of ideas was like the process of like planting a lot of seeds and seeing what actually, started growing.
Got it. Got it. All right. So you taught yourself how to code. You were coming up with all these ideas. What was the first idea that you decided to actively pursue?
Well, my first company, I would say I've done about, depends on what you count. If you count everything, probably close to 7 unique projects slash companies, but things that actually worked, I would say I'm on my like third or fourth. And the first concept that really worked was this company it was called WalmStreet.com, which is a funny, sorry, you asked me what was your question again?
What was the first idea that you
Okay, yeah,
decided to
yeah.
actively pursue?
Okay. I was like, I'm answering your question, right? So yeah, the first one was a company called WalmStreet.com, which eventually turned into Spotlight.fm. And I had an idea. This was before YouTube, like the paid content creators was a thing. So I think I was tapping into something that was certainly true. And it was like this base assumption, like, we're all contributing content to these social media websites and they're making money off of advertising. So what about a social media system that was purely based off of like every single person had a revenue share based off of the clicks um that their content was generating. So
Hmm.
that ended up being a core part of YouTube. So I definitely think I was onto something. But it's funny, that was the initial idea.
Okay.
And to kickstart getting people using the system, we hosted an online contest. And it
And
was all, oh, go ahead.
who was we?
I had a couple of co-founders, like
Okay.
a business co-founder, and then a tech co-founder who was like, far better programmer than me. And by the way, I eventually had a breakup with both of them. I was cornered at like jumping to the end of the story. I got kicked out of the board and the company that I started eventually. So that was a good lesson in picking the right co-founders. But I'm actually friends with both of them, and we kind of laugh about the fact that it was this like crazy college startup that blew up. But
Dude,
anyway,
so
going back to the beginning. Oh, go ahead. What?
it sounds like there's a lot of similarities. You basically started YouTube is what I'm hearing.
I
And just like Steve Jobs, you got kicked out of the board. So like, dude,
Yep.
that's
Yeah,
a lot
there's
of
like a
overlap.
path, if you will. But yeah, so me and my technical co-founder were like, all right, let's host an online contest for this really popular event in Madison and like get local businesses to like chip in prizes. And it was really like kickstart people uploading videos to the site. And this contest like worked really well. It worked really well. And we pivoted the company on the spot. We're like, hey, like, what about a platform to host like online contests? Um, and we just started pitching more and more businesses on like, hey, like there was a local grocery store that had this hilarious commercial. So we hosted a contest for like local filmmakers to make a commercial for this business. And we hosted a up and coming band contest for a music festival. And it was all hosted on this website. So we created the underlying tech for like online contests. We weren't making any money off of it, but we had hundreds of thousands of users, people going on to vote, people going on to submit content. And there was many verticals, videos for businesses, picture contests for newspapers. Like it was a cool concept. And the one that worked by far the most was the up and coming band contests for festivals and events. So it was like a local festival. It's like, hey, like we're looking for an opening band. Submit. It was like a mini like American Idol. Submit your videos to this website. People can go on and vote, and it created a lot of buzz around the event. And the promoters who organized that event started using our platform for um, shows that they were doing outside of the festival. So the first big band that used our platform was Pretty Lights, And that contest like blew up, more users than ever. It worked really, it like brought a lot of attention to the event. The event sold out. And then the managers of Pretty Lights was like, hey, that thing was kind of cool. Like, do you want to like come on tour with us? And they started hosting contests all over their tours. And like the platform hit scale. Like we started, other artists picked it up, and we had a little ecosystem of, it was like EDM artists around the country.
So
Um,
when you say hit scale, what does that mean?
Well, there was, instead of us having to go and find somebody, to host a contest, we had inbound, and people like we created a self-serve platform where people could fire up contests on their own. And we would
Hmm.
wake up in the morning and see like 10 new contests for artists that we liked, and we didn't do the outbound ourselves. It just was like it was rolling. Like I was saying, hundreds of thousands of users, I think, is what I would define as scale. And we were like working with big brands like Ableton, and record labels were hosting contests. And it was like really, really working, in terms of getting people to the website, but we weren't making any money off of it. It was all being like floated by, some investors we knew, friends and family money. I think all of our, yeah, like I'm not afraid to say like all of our parents chipped in like 10K.
Gotcha.
God bless
So
them for doing it. Yeah.
that's actually also something I wanted to touch on was I guess if someone's hearing this conversation and doesn't really know how startups work, right? Because startups is very much a buzzword. So if you had to define what a startup is and then fast forward a little bit into then what a company is at a very 10,000 foot level, how would you describe it?
And yeah, and just for the record, we got like pretty deep into my first company. It eventually led to the company that I'm doing now, which is called Prism. And Prism is like far upgraded from what Spotlight FM ever was, and has a better revenue stream. And we're like more of a mission critical software in the music industry. Funny enough, we have a lot of the same clients, but I think that's, what I've learned with Prism and how far I've gone with Prism is like far beyond what I was doing with Spotlight FM. But circling back on your question, what was it again? So what's the difference between a startup and a company?
Yes, I want to dig into a little bit like, you've mentioned like the board. Like I want
Yeah.
to understand what that is better. So I think most people probably know what a startup is, but I guess just to take everyone from baseline, how do you define a startup? And then when does that kind of transition into more of a mature company, if you will?
Yeah, I think, I don't there's no true definition that I'm aware of, like of what's a startup and what's a company. Like it's all kind of like a little bit ambiguous. Like some people say that like Tesla's like the biggest startup in the country, and like what makes it a startup, I think, is like a horizontal, leadership structure and innovation. And then you might go and say, okay, is a startup horizontal leadership and innovation? I like the way that I think about it is, um, a startup is a founder or a group of people that are forging their way into a new opportunity, and are, creating their own business, if you will. And there's like tech startups, and then there's a really interesting conversation around like, okay, is a startup like a shoe polisher at an airport?
Mm,
I would say so in a small way, but, the way that I think about startups, like at least the branch of startups that I know, are more so around like the tech space. But there's startups outside of the tech space. I actually know someone who's starting a bathhouse in Austin, and I think it's like a really, really cool concept. When that company becomes a company, I think that's really ambiguous. It's like Prism is now 6 years after launch, and we have like, executives at the company, and we've like matured a lot, but I still
hmm.
consider ourselves a startup. Um, but then, I don't know, is like General Motors a startup? Like definitely not.
Right,
So
right. So
I don't really
it's
know how to tell
ambiguous.
you what the difference is between a company and a startup, but like, I think it's, back to the whole point of like Tesla being the, I kind of like that and believe in it. Maybe a startup is like a company that's like willing to, throw shit at the wall and hope it sticks. They're willing to be innovative, try new things, try new concepts, like, go and I heard it once defined as, entrepreneurship is like wielding resources that are outside of your control. So I think that's kind of a interesting
Hmm.
concept. So that's the answer to like what is a startup, what is a company. You had also asked me about like a board. Do you
Yeah.
want me to talk
So
about that a little bit?
so you're a founder, right? So you founded this company, and I think the majority of the population would think, oh, you founded this company, so it's yours. So talk to us about ownership structures and what that looks like. Again, the show is going to be called "Explain It to Me Like I'm a Third Grader,"
Yeah, yeah.
but that title didn't look good on Spotify, so we changed it up to a curiosity class. But
Okay.
I love this idea of kind of sticking to it. Like, okay, I want to pretend I'm a third grader. Like,
Yeah.
you founded this company
Maybe the
with some
subtitle of
people.
your, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You founded this company with some people. You had some money from friends and family. So now all of a sudden, what does that look like?
Yeah, I'll jump to Prism because Walm Street was founded with like a very small check from some friends and family. Prism was never friends and family money. We raised money from an investor who wrote the first check. But let me back up and talk about like structure in general. So when I started Prism, and funny enough, Prism was an evolution of a company called Solstice.
Okay.
And when I started Solstice, I really had my choice on how I wanted to found it. Like I could have just been a sole founder and said, I'm going to take 100% of the equity and I'm going to like pay someone, you know, a salary and build out this tech platform. Well, therein lies the first problem is I didn't have any money to pay somebody. So instead of like paying an engineer to like build out the initial technology, I like courted a technical co-founder and I split up equity with him.
Got it.
Um, it
Got it.
turns
Got
out
it.
both the technical co-founder and I, um, we needed a reason not to like get a job somewhere else because we had bills to pay. So we found an investor that was willing to write the first check. And our income early on was like really modest. I remember
The in
like
the income to the company or the income to you both
the
personally?
salary that we were drawing. So from the
Got it.
investment, we both like the investor was cool with like us taking a small salary so that we could just focus on this fully.
Got it.
His name's Mark Bakken. He was an angel investor, an angel in the truest sense. I wouldn't have been able to just focus on this fully.
And sorry, just to define angel investing.
Yeah. So an angel investor is a high net worth individual that writes a personal check out of their personal bank account in a nutshell, as
Got it.
opposed to like an institution.
Got it. Cool. Thank
And
you.
an institution is like a business that's like, like an institution has someone who goes and raises money from a bunch of different people and pools cash from a bunch of different people and
And
then
that would
puts
be
into
like
a startup.
a
Yeah.
venture capital allocator,
Private
something like that,
equity.
right? Private
Yeah.
equity. Okay. Cool.
Tech incubator. So, I didn't have to get an investor, but I wanted to work on this fully and was excited by the opportunity of working on this fully. So I found an investor that was down to like write the initial check. His reward was getting equity in the business, which has grown in value over time. And
Hmm.
God willing, one day I write him a check that's 10, 20, 30 times, the value of what he put in, at least double, at
Yeah.
least get him his money back. God willing, like the far end of the spectrum. Really want to knock this out of the park for them.
And
Um,
so is the idea there? So, you and your technical co-founder, you went to this investor and you said, "Hey, we have this idea. This is the idea." You kind of you explain the idea to this investor, and if the investor is on board, they also think it's a great idea. You say, "Hey, this is how much money we're looking for." They write you a check, and that check is meant to cover all your expenses as a company, but also the salaries that you both are drawing. Did I get that right?
Yeah, and once again, like had I had money, I could have founded the company in different ways. I could have just done it on the side, just nights and weekends, and I could have had a job. And it's like, we're not going to raise money. We'll just fork it out of our own pockets, and we'll do this nights and weekends. But then it's like, well, I'm doing it nights and weekends, and during the day, I'm like doing something else. And
Hmm.
I really, I thought by selling a little bit of the company to an investor, I could create an upsized return for myself. I could create more value quicker. And
Sure.
like, let's say we gave the investor 20%. Like the calculus for me was like, do I believe that 20% is worth it because it allows me to go full time on this thing and not focus on other things?
Got you. Got you. Got you.
So,
Okay.
and by the way, I just want to be clear, funding for an early stage company is quite different than a later stage company. Like, I
Got
wouldn't
it.
say there's a well-trodden path for like an early stage business. Like I was saying, like maybe an angel investor that writes a check so you can take 1,500 bucks a month, which is what I was doing early on. And I thought like, I remember one of my co-founders. had different expenses, and he like needed like 2,800 bucks a month. And I was like, dang, that's like he's
That's
asking
a
a lot
lot.
out of the company, you know. And now in hindsight, I'm like, oh my God, like we
So
were really working for almost nothing.
how did you think about, I mean, because that's such a great question, right? It's like, how did you come to the math to figure out what number you even needed to ask the angel investor for? You know what I mean? Because were you doing like, okay, these are going to be our expenses. This is what, I need to live. And then you kind of figure out how long that's going to last you. Right. And then,
Yeah. Well, back to what I was saying, I think like, and the times have changed as well. So I don't know if this would be the same thing for an entrepreneur getting into it today. But when I was starting the company, I was just much more short term focused. And six
mm,
months to me was like, 6 months was a really big deal. Nowadays, like 6 months is like, back in the day, we would raise enough money to like go like to run like a 6 month experiment. And now I'm like 6 months, like we need like 24 months to like really kind of see if something works or not. So as the company has matured, our risk tolerance has diminished.
mm-hmm,
Um, and early on, like being scrappy, it was around like trusting an assumption. Like we're like, hey, with the first 50 grand investment, we can get this thing off the ground. We can get 30 customers. And we'll generate like X amount of revenue. And for us, it was like the best analogy that I've heard is it's like refueling stations. Like if you are
got it.
chasing funding, and not all businesses chase funding, I want to be clear. I'm actually quite envious of companies that haven't chased as much, that went a different route than I went route. But if you do go the chasing funding route, you got to think about like um, refueling stations. So the next real, like I'm envisioning a refueling station 12 months into the future. And in order to get to there effectively, we need to have money in the bank for 12 months. B, we need to, grow the company. We need to show X amount of progress to get to that refueling center and look interesting for the next series of investors. So, for us, I'm just going to throw out base numbers. It was like launch the initial platform, get 40 customers, get to 30,000 in recurring revenue. And we did that. So like investors were like, oh, cool. Like you got this track record of saying you were going to do X and you did it. So now you're saying you're not going from, you're going from 30,000 to, 400,000 in recurring revenue. And I kind
Mm-hmm.
of believe that you're going to do that because you already jumped through this first hurdle. And then we would go and do that. And then we could justify like a bigger round of funding. So anyway, that's a giant nutshell of like the funding journey.
Got it. Got it. Got it. And so when you're talking about fueling stations, it's basically like, hey, this is how much money we have to get. This will last us X months. So if we get this round of funding today and it's going to last us 12 months, at 12 months, we will be out of money. And so you're
Yeah.
constantly thinking about fundraising and okay, cool. When are we going to get to the next check? And is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I was getting this off the ground. Now Prism is like much more stable. So we're standing on our own 2 feet, and we're like, no longer needing investors to like investment has turned into more of like, hey, is there opportunity that we can go and pursue? But yeah, in
Gotcha.
the early days of the company, it was this very much like, all right, we got enough money for 18 months. So or at first it was like we got enough money for 6 months, and then
Right.
we would get to 6 months and I would like accrue salary, and we would like really ramp down expenses, raise money, get reimbursed for the salary we accrued. And then slowly I was like, oh, like I don't want to like skip my pay anymore. So if we have enough money in the bank for 12 months, then I got to start raising at 9 months. And then it's like, okay, we got enough money in the bank for 24 months. That means my cash flow is like 18 months. So
Got
eventually,
it.
if you want to be more and more kind of like fiduciary, if you want to be more responsible from like a fiduciary perspective, like especially when you have employees that you're paying, you don't want to like run the company to like fuel tank empty. Like think of it from that perspective, right? Like
Right. Right. Right.
you're
Right.
traveling through the desert, and um you want to time a gas station, so you got a quarter of a tank, you don't want to like, I'm on E, I've been on E for 30 miles, I got 10 miles to go, like, and if I run out of gas, I'm pushing this thing. Because it's like if you have enough people in the car, it's like, no, you could die, like. So yeah, get to the gas station with like a quarter tank, and then eventually you just have your own resources. And the company, like where we've gotten now, is like the company is just, we're sustainable, and getting into
That's
deeper and deeper layers of sustainability. But yeah,
that's so cool, man. That's
thank
so
you.
cool. I want to circle back just a little bit about the
Yeah,
board structure.
yeah,
So Okay, so how does that work? How does the ownership structure work? What is a board? What does that mean?
Yeah, so the board is the board hires and fires the CEO or manages the CEO, if you will. And at the end of the day, it like keeps the CEO in check. And if you think like the CEO keeps the rest of the company in check.
Hmm.
So it's a system of like rules and regulations, if you will, that entrepreneurs really put on themselves. Like, I had a lot of I had and do still have a lot of free will in terms of how I want to structure a board. And as I make decisions over time, that free will kind of shapes and shifts based off of the decisions that I made. But like, let me kind of simplify what I just said. So I could choose not to have a board. Um, and if I just went out and kind of told investors that, and hey, I'm just not going to have a board, um, and I'm just going to run this company. Like some investors might say, yeah, some investors might be like, no, I'm not comfortable with that. Like for instance, like FTX, this like crypto stock exchange that failed,
Hmm.
like they didn't have a board. So
Interesting.
they had the freedom of like operating however the hell they wanted, but turns out that bit them and their investors in the ass. So like I think forming a board is a recognition of humility, at least it is for me, which is like I want to be held accountable by people who are smarter than me because A, they're going to like, and I want to, but I want to be able to trust them too, that they're going to have what's best for the company in mind because like I ultimately want the company to succeed. So you form a board for the, ideally for the, benefit of the company. So, early on, the way the board formed was like me and my co-founder, and then our first investor did want to be on the board. If he was going to invest into us, we were like, great, please join the board. And then we would have quarterly board meetings with him. And it brings them deeper into the strategy. So board seats are kind of like negotiation. Like every round of funding that we've had, it's been a part of the negotiation table. Like on one side, if an investor is writing $1 million check, if they can be on the board, that gives them like positive reassurance that they can watch out for the benefit of the company. On the other side of the coin, I'm like evaluating, okay, A, do I trust them? Do I believe they're good faith? Do I believe that they're gonna like hold me accountable in a way where like, that I'm comfortable with? And do I think that their advice is gonna benefit? I am very grateful to have said that I started my first company where my two co-founders eventually, turned on me. That was the
Apple,
last
yes.
that was the last time I ever had someone on the board that I wasn't comfortable with. So I think it's just like a discernment and a vetting process. Like I've nailed every board position after that. And yeah, once again, it's just this calculus of like, A, do I want what they're offering, i.e. the investment? And then B, do I think that they're going to be a positive add to the board? And then eventually it's like if the board gets bigger, like a publicly traded company, then it's a congregation of people like making those decisions. There's certain moments where the board can like outgrow the founder and the CEO. Mine has not yet, but like I think you hear the example of like Steve Jobs getting fired from his board. Well, he stacked his board in a way where where they, five or six people in the middle of the night could call each other up and be like, hey, this Steve guy is kind of a maniac. Like maybe we should vote him off.
Mm,
And that was the result of him like building, like he didn't have to build Apple that way, but I think he wanted to go public and just brought a bunch of people on and the board got out of control. So managing I've kept my board really small. Like it's four people, me, my co-founder, and two investors.
got
And
it.
one of the investors is someone that I've worked with for 10 years. And the other
Got it.
investor is the person who just led the last round of funding. So I trust everyone on the board. I think the only chance that I'm gonna get fired is like if I fail miserably at my job, if I do something in bad faith, and in that situation, like I should get fired. So I'm like kind of cool with that. But yeah. Anyway,
So
so yeah.
effectively the board is made up of people that you ultimately decide because you're the CEO, you're a founder, right? So
Mhm.
you decide, hey, I'm gonna bring in a board. That's, the first decision. The second decision is cool, who's gonna be on that board? And it sounds like it's usually someone who is investing in the company that you also value their advice. Does it ever happen where you'll bring on a board member without an investment? So strictly as an advisory role or something like that?
We haven't done that yet. Some companies will stack their board with someone who they find like strategically interesting. Usually it comes with an investment, but like for me, like you might imagine me putting someone that's like an executive in the music industry that can like open doors for the business, and it like it lets them in on the circle of trust, and they're like, hey, like I have all these people that could benefit the business. But like I don't want to introduce them to the company unless like I can really see the inner workings. So yeah, there's people add strategic board members all the time for the benefit of the company, but I haven't yet. I my perspective is like you can you can have a strategic relationship with someone without bringing them into your board. So if the right person came along and that was really appealing to them, I would certainly consider it. But yeah, at this moment, there's a lot of people who are strategically involved with Prism and they haven't asked for a board seat. And
Got
we
it.
have a good relationship. Yeah, but it's definitely a thing people do.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. Cool. I think that that really helps kind of understand the founding and the leadership body.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, is that fairly common at, like, do all companies have a board?
I think a lot do. Some don't. If they're just like an LLC, or if like they have kind of like symbolic boards, like the I don't know what a one person board type thing. Like it's just you can structure a company however you want to. It's just like you got to just think about. I really wanted to raise money to get this company off of the ground, so it just really made sense for me. And it's been a system of checks and balances. Like I was saying, like FTX did not have a board, and the
Right.
founder was like doing all sorts of sketchy shit that like your average competent board member would have been like, yo, like we can't take customer funds and throw it, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, you don't have to have a board, but I did it as like a way. And I should just be clear, the board like votes on major kind of things like is the company going to take debt on? They approve a round of funding. If you're firing an executive, you have to get consent from the board.
Got it.
Um, approving budget plans. So they get in on the really important strategic chess moves. And like I was saying, if you get the right people, they help you kind of come up with these strategies as opposed to just yeah, putting their stamp of approval on what you're doing. I've also heard stories of like I didn't hear from Mark Zuckerberg directly, but like I've heard that there's people like Zuck who have like stacked his board with a lot of people that are just that don't have a strong opinion. And because I guess like Zuck just feels really empowered with his vision and his capabilities to just have a board that's like kind of like a yes man to him. And you know, like I would prefer to have people who aren't yes man who like challenge me on specific things, but some entrepreneurs might not like it. They just want full autonomy. And in that case, like either um a straw man board is right for them or no board at all. And in that moment, it's like more and more responsibility then just falls on the entrepreneur. Whereas with me, like I'm the CEO, the buck still stops with me, but I feel like comfort that I am running my high level decisions past a board of people that are, saying, Matt, I kind of agree with you. That's a good idea. Or they'll push back on me if they disagree.
Got it. Got it. Got it. And so if in those situations where the CEO wants a board that's just like someone that'll say yes to them, is the benefit of having a board at that point just to go out and show like legitimacy in the world? Like why would you have a board if you don't actually care about their opinion?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a great question. Like maybe I frankly don't know some of the logistics of it. Like there's like requirements with going public. Like you
Got
need a
it. Got
board
it.
of
Got it.
directors to go public. So they wanted to like be listed on specific stock exchanges, or maybe they like, took on investment that they wanted the investment, but they wouldn't take on if there was three people that were offering them money, they would take the money with the board member that was least likely to boss them around, or they would kind of stipulate that with the board.
Got it.
Um,
Got it. Got it. Okay.
I don't have experience in that because I didn't go that route. So I'm just over here kind of speculating on like why someone would form like a straw man board. Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So we have the leadership set up. We
Yeah.
understand a little bit about funding. What else is there to know about startups? That's basically it, right? You get your organization and then you get some
That's
funding and then
it.
you're good to go.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, um, I don't know, like is the question like what what are the buckets of things that are like that I think about? Maybe is that a way to take it?
Well, yeah, I guess that's even a better route to go is take a typical Wednesday
Yeah.
for you and your role as a CEO. What does that look like for you? Like walk us through your work day.
Yeah. Well, Prism is a software system for the live music industry, and our core product is our software platform. So as a CEO, I'm naturally very product oriented, and our departments are really quite simple. It's like build the product, um, sell the product, support the product.
Okay.
Um, and inside of selling, there's like direct sales, and then there's marketing. So each of these departments inside of product, there's like planning and executing. So you might think of like product managers and engineers. So on a typical Wednesday, like I think I bucket my time into um like engineering is something that I put at the top of um my to-do list, because I think as a tech company, it would be foolish not to be product led and engineering led.
Sure.
So I'll weigh in on, I'll brainstorm ideas for the future that could help us capture more market share, more wallet share. I'll, check in on how we're executing on products. I'll help unblock key team members. I think a lot about team management more and more as the CEO with 30 people now that work for me, which is not a giant company, but it's different than 3 people. Like I'm actually managing people now at this point. So like, I think a lot about team culture and, hiring and firing, basically like, is everyone at the company a bar raiser is something that we try
Mm,
and hold ourselves accountable to, meaning like, yeah, I think that's kind of self-explanatory. Like Netflix has this idea called the keeper test, which is if you're managing someone and they came to you tomorrow and said, um, so I'm getting recruited away from the business. I got a good job offer. Would you fight to keep them? And if the answer is
mm,
yes, then you like should not wait for them to, for that moment to happen. You should do everything in your power to like keep them engaged with the company. And alternatively, if the answer is no, you wouldn't fight to keep them, maybe you should be proactive in either pushing them to become a keeper or helping them find a company where they can be more of a help. Um, so I think a lot about team management and culture these days, and so I'm unpacking kind of challenges around, and like thankfully, I do feel like I have built a company of winners. So it's just a matter of like keeping people happy. Um, so anyway, like I'm going back to your question, and then you know, strategic partnerships, like some of the biggest sales deals at the company kind of like are still in my, like, I'm not necessarily like working the deals directly, but I have, being the CEO, I have like the most relationships in the industry and the highest card. So I'll get pulled into like the biggest deals. And then, last but not least is like finance and board, management, and board management is really just kind of like, it's like being the captain of the ship and kind of, clearly stating like, here's where we are, here's where we're going, here's the fuel required to get to there. And when we get to there, here's where we're going to be. And when we get to there, we're actually going to want to get to here. And here's why the company is going to be safe and secure and financially healthy and stable. So anyway, that's like a slew of things that I do on a day-to-day basis. But I'll summarize and say, build a fucking awesome product. Make sure we have the resources to keep the company, to keep people paid. There you go. To keep great people paid. That's the
okay.
CEO's job.
To keep
Yeah.
the keepers
To keep the keepers. Yeah.
getting paid. All right.
Yeah.
I like that. I
Yeah.
like
And
that.
I think, it like I was saying, like team management wasn't a thing when I had 3 people hacking away at this thing. Like I think team
Right.
management became a thing around like 12 people, like there was a moment when we had like 12 to 15 people where like culture and drama like became a thing. And I was just like, I'm like a young person. And when I started Prism, I was a little younger. I'm still young, but whatever. I'm like a young, cool dude. We are a music industry startup. Like people just like enjoy working here. And when all of a sudden, like that was mostly true, but then, I had like employees come to me and desire for Prism to like, I don't know, be a better and better workplace. I was like, at first I was kind of frustrated by it. It's like, oh, what? why aren't people just happy and satisfied, you know? And then I realized it's like, okay, you know, like there's a yeah, you know, there's a world of things that matter to people, and working at a cool company with a cool CEO is like one thing, but you know, do they have good communications with their team? Do they have systems of feedback? Do they have accountability? Do they have goals? Do they feel like they're accelerating? Do they feel like there is like room for growth? Do they understand where the company is going? Like these are all things that I think are really important in the mind of employees. And yeah, once again, like I don't have to think about any of that when it's three people and it's just me. It's like, yeah, we're all here because
Mm,
we came up with the vision ourselves. But when there's 12 people or 20 people or 30 people, then all of a sudden that vision is like, then all of a sudden people are taking this as jobs. They're choosing to work at Prism instead of Google or Facebook. So then it's like, okay, what type of stuff is Facebook offering and how do we compete on that front? So anyway, yeah.
man, just the more people you have, the bigger problems you have to solve, just as it relates to team culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really, I mean, the more you get it right early on, then the culture evolves from like a sound structure. And the more that it's broken early on, then brokenness will evolve from it is what I've learned. And I would say we had one major kind of moment of like getting the culture, a part of the culture was really wrong, and we had to like peel it back and let parted ways with a co-founder, and it was like taking out a tumor or something. Like it was really intense. Not specifically parting ways with him, but like, you know, the culture shift, it's serious. It's not just like, oh, you just start doing happy hours one day and you going to concerts together. Like, no, it's like it's around, it's like around like how do you talk to each other? Like what's okay, what's not okay,
Mm,
and how do you screen for that when you hire? Uh and I'll just end in saying, you know, we just hired a backend engineer, and the two things that were most important to me were attitude and integrity. And like I was like, if the attitude is a 10 out of 10, if the integrity is a 10 out of 10, like they're gonna be a good engineer. Granted, they
mm,
have to have like demonstrated that they know what they're doing from an engineering
sure,
perspective. But
sure.
you know, I would take someone that's like here in their engineering journey versus here. If like this person has like way better attitude and higher integrity, like it's just such an important thing for me. And I think about like, yeah, high integrity, attitude, work ethic a whole lot.
Do you think that's learned over time? Did you used to have that? Have you always had that thought
No,
process?
no, I mean, there's a journey of like, you know, I did take on the Netflix approach, which is like, hey, like let go of people when they're not working. And I've gotten better at firing over time, though it's never fun. But you know, just you know, so what happens is someone will join the company and it like it's just kind of clear that it's not working. I find myself in conversations with managers and with coworkers where it's like, hey, like so and so, their Sally is contributing, but like, you know, there's drama, or there's like in some ways she's contributing, in other ways things are falling through the crack, Sally or John or, you know, whatever miscellaneous person. Um, and then you have to make this tough decision of like, if you fire them, you lose that productivity, but then the people around them are like, you get the, you know, the kind of increase in people knowing that like there's a bar at the company, and that, you know, there's, you know, you really shape culture through how you hire and fire is really what
Mm.
happens. And once again, we've gotten better at identifying that over time. But yeah, I mean, it can be difficult to like Netflix encourages companies to like fire B players, for instance. And easier said than done. Like you can say like, oh yeah, that reinforces a culture of A players. But when you have an employee, like when you have an employee that's working, that's like carrying a load, but you know, it may be a situation where it's good but not great. Like I think those are really important moments to, you know, either like double down on like helping them get to a place where it can be great, or just encourage them to find somewhere where they can be fully plugged in, you know? So
Mm.
anyway, it's definitely it's shaped a lot over time. And I think I'm only a certain like I don't think I'm an expert at this by any means. I don't want to claim that I'm an expert. Like I'm still figuring this out for sure.
I think that's what makes you such a good CEO is that you're willing to continue learning, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
So I wanna transition towards the end of the show here and ask
Yeah.
you a couple of questions just about things that you've learned and kind of what you see going forward. So, in terms of if you could give yourself when you first started out one piece of advice from all that you know now,
Oh,
what would you tell yourself?
oh gosh. One of the most helpful things that I've heard lately is the approaching business with non-attachment, like the Zen concept of non-attachment and non-attachment to the outcome. And to be clear, like non-attachment does not mean apathy. Um,
Say more.
yeah, so I'm non-attachment says I'm gonna play full out to win in every situation. But I'm not gonna be attached to what happens. I'm gonna just genuinely see, like in business, we need so much outside of our actions to work out for ourselves. Like I believe a product is going to be really good for the market. Well, that's my belief. I'm going to go and test it, and um, the market's going to tell me if that's true or not. And non-attachment is I'm willing for the market to tell me this thing sucks. And if I'm
Got it.
willing, like I'm not heartbroken. I'm like, okay, cool. Like the market told me it sucks. Like, what can I do to make it better? And I'm just more resilient. And it feels more sustainable to be non-attached. And I think, and once again, non-attached versus apathy, like I'm gonna play to win fully, even if I don't win. Whereas apathy is kind of this like laissez-faire, like, oh, like maybe I succeed, maybe I don't. I'm gonna kick my feet back up. Like non-attachment is an attitude that leads to resilience. Like if I can play to win, but I ultimately surrender to the universe, and I know this sounds like spiritual, I surrender to like what happens, then then I have like the spirit to then go and adapt if I need to adapt or try a new idea if I need to try. Whereas like if I'm just so attached onto an outcome, maybe I'll hold on to something when it's not working, and that will lead to my doom.
Mm, that's so cool, man.
Yeah,
I, lo-
non-attachment
I
has been like a thing.
I
Yeah.
love that. I definitely need some of that in my life. So I'm gonna take that with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Um,
now
okay.
looking ahead, how do you think about the future and what do you hope to achieve in the future?
Yeah.
Small question.
Well, with my like I think that's pretty simple. With Prism, there's a event horizon slash like inflection point in the future with the product vision coming to life fully. And whether we like, like I can't really see beyond that event horizon is what I will say. And it's been 10 years of digging into the music industry and understanding what works and like understanding how to build tech. And now we are like so close to having the product fully up and running. I don't really know how big the business is when this thing is like fully alive, but I'm just so hungry to see it come to life. And what I do with the company at that moment, I think is, I care about less than like actually having this product fully set up. And I believe when it's fully set up, Prism will be like a forever shift in the music industry. Like we'll have like it's like the music industry going from selling paper tickets to digital tickets. Like Prism has the ability to bring all these like a whole network of people using an online tool. Like it's like short-term rentals is never going back to not having something like Airbnb. Like I think Prism has
Right,
the
right.
ability to be that for the music industry. So that's what I'm focused on in the future. And like outside of my job, it's just like happiness. Like I'm happy doing this. I'm enjoying doing this. It pays well. I like my life outside of Prism. So I know some founders may have the goal of like making a billion dollars so they can do this and this and this. Like I already feel like I'm doing something that I'm enjoying a lot. And as long as I'm enjoying it and I'm happy, then, I'll just keep doing it.
It's so cool, man. It's so cool. Well, it's been amazing to witness. We've been friends for coming up on 3 years now, and it's
Yeah.
it's been pretty insane to
Feels like
get
10.
a. It's been incredible to watch your journey and just the little glimpses that I've gotten to see, and I so appreciate you and you letting me in, and I appreciate your friendship, your mentorship, and just
You
your energy,
too.
man.
Yeah. Let me just add one more thing. Another thing too, I think is like resilience. Like Um, like this is a game of last person standing. Like
Mm,
it is not for the faint of hearts, and you got to be ready to like the universe is going to ask that you develop thick skin. Like that's what I would tell myself in the beginning. And like
mm,
I had a like a older business partner of mine early on in the journey. Like we like walked into City Hall and expected we were going to get funding for a music festival we were organizing, and they just basically slammed the door on us. And immediately he goes, "Don't get discouraged." He just said that, and like I think about that every time I get the door slammed in my face. Like, don't get discouraged. You're just you're just an entrepreneur that got the door slammed in your face. And Steve Jobs, Elon, Zuck, whoever, like, welcome to the club. Like they all constantly get the door slammed in their face. And, I think success is just resilience, being willing to be like, all right, cool. Like I'm just going to wake up and keep doing my job.
right. Well, it goes back to
Yeah.
that non-attachment thing, right?
They're connected. They're connected for sure. But dude, such a fun conversation. Really appreciate doing this.
Thank you so much. I'm sure there will be many, many more to come.
Yeah, we'll have to do another one and go deep into the music industry, but this is a
Ooh,
good, yeah, yeah.
that's episode 2.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you so much. Oh, where can people find out more about you, about Prism? Where should we send them?
Yeah, I don't really like keep social media following, but Prism, you can find us on Instagram. I think is where we're most active. I have a podcast, the live music industry podcast. If you want to like learn more about the live music industry, you can follow me on LinkedIn. But I think sending people to Prism's Instagram and is probably the biggest way to like stay in the loop with what we're doing.
Okay. And what's the handle at Prism?
I think it's Prism FM.
Okay.
Let me pull that up right now, and you can obviously get it for the page. I believe it's Prism FM, but let me double check. It's right here. Yeah, Prism FM.
Sweet. All right.
Easy
Yeah,
enough.
we'll link that in the, I think they're called show notes, is what
How
I've heard them called.
does episode number 1 feel?
Dude, it
You
feels
stoked?
great. It
Yeah, you
feels
gonna keep doing
amazing.
this?
Yeah, dude. Wait, I'm gonna stop the recording.